Welcome. I'm State Senator Clay Schofield, and just want to welcome all of you to this very historic occasion. We welcome the next President of the United States of America, Senator Marco Rubio. Let me ask you a question. How many of you are ready to beat Hillary Clinton? How many of you are willing to do your part, do everything that you can to make sure that we embark on a truly new American century by electing Senator Marco Rubio, President of the greatest nation in the world, the United States of America? Now, please welcome Pastor Warren Jones of Guntersville First Baptist. Being a community of faith, we want to open this up with a prayer. So, Pastor Jones, Ron and
let's pray. Dear Lord, we just thank you for today. We thank you for the freedom you have given us to come here, to meet here, just to be in your presence, Lord, to be with such great leadership, Lord. Lord, we live today the words that you gave Solomon as recorded in 2 Chronicles. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land. Lord, we lift those words back to you and we pray, we ask it. Lord, we are a nation, we are a people that is in need of your hand now more than ever. Lord, I lift the Rubio family, lift Senator Rubio up to you, Lord, his family, his campaign, everyone working with him. Lord, I lift them up to you. I pray that you would just allow them to seek you for guidance, seek you for wisdom. Lord, I pray that you will be with them through this next year, all that's going to face them in opposition. Lord, I pray that you give them perseverance to face whatever may come their way. And I pray that whatever the outcome may be, Lord, I pray that your hand be upon them. And I pray that you allow them to speak life, speak wisdom, and stand for you in all the lives that they impact, all the people that they speak to, and every town that they go into. Lord, I pray that your hand be with them. Lord, I pray as a people, as a nation, I pray that you would just bring us back to our knees, to seek your guidance, to seek your wisdom, to seek your hand of blessing upon this nation. Lord, I pray that you just bring this back to you, that your hand be upon us, that your will be done. And Lord, I pray that you will turn us back to you in all ways. We thank you for today. I thank you for Marco and his stance and his belief in you, Lord. And I pray that you just continue to pour out into him and may he speak your truth, may he stand for you. Bless us today. Be with all the ones who come to speak, be with all who are here, who have taken part, Lord. We pray that your Spirit lead, guide, and bless us today. In Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Now, please welcome to the stage a true American hero, one of our local heroes, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag, Warren Jones.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Corey. Most importantly, thank you from all of us for your service to our American country. Now, please welcome to the stage the man that worked so hard to make this happen. Our very own Representative Will Ainsworth, who is also the co-chairman of Marco Rubio for Alabama. Will had a little accident. You might think that he got a broke arm. raising taxes in Montgomery. We're just glad you and your family are okay, so we'll.
So glad to be here. We're excited to have Senator Marco Rubio of Guntersville. I'll give y'all 5 reasons I'm excited about supporting Senator Rubio. Number one, integrity. Integrity matters. And the reason Senator Rubio has integrity is because of his faith. He has a faith in Christ that's much needed in America, and because of that, he's a great family man, he's a great father, and a wonderful husband. Number two, he's a rock-solid conservative. If you look at any of his voting records, he's one of the most conservative, consistent votes in D.C. 100% with pro-life, which is so important to our family, 100% with NRA, and no doubt about it, he's a rock-solid conservative. Number three, we need somebody that can unite and excite the party. How exciting it is to see young people in here, old people, members of the Tea Party, members of the Chamber, and he can unite the whole party. Guess what? That leads into point number 4. When we do that, we can win back the White House. Who wants to do that? He's the candidate that has a message, plan, and vision. Number 5, he's hands down the most knowledgeable on issues, on policy, domestic and foreign. He's got a great vision for America. He's an inspiration. In my opinion, he is the most exciting candidate in my lifetime. And y'all help me and give Senator Marco Rubio a huge Alabama welcome.
Your help and introduction. Last but not least, we definitely want to thank the true American hero, Corey Harmon, and thank you for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for our service to our country. Corey, thank you so much. You know, Corey's a Gator. Hey, listen, now we had a tough Saturday. Can anyone here kick field goals? Because I get you enrolled into the University of Florida real quick. We had an open tryout not long ago. Look, it's going to be a tough Saturday. Alabama, I think, is favored by 17. I will make you this guarantee right now. You will not cover the spread. Anyway, yeah, we were going to move this closer to Saturday, but we figured we're probably going to win on Saturday. You probably wouldn't be happy with it. I know, I'm talking to you. Hey, the Auburn people are fine with it. I just thought that was fine. All right, let's get back to an easier topic. The future of America, which is what we're here gathered to talk about today. I want to thank you for coming out today. It is raining out there, and I know it's tough to get here, and I'm grateful you came. I really am. We look forward to being your part of it. Because this election is one that you should be excited about. We face real challenges as a country. We face real challenges, but we also face real opportunities. And today I want to talk to you about both of them. Now, one of the unique things about running for president is you get to go to all kinds of places around this great land, and you get to hear from people all over this country about what's on their mind, about their hopes, their dreams, their anxieties, and their fears. And I want to share a little bit of that with you today and what I think we need to do moving forward. People are anxious about the future. They still believe America is the greatest country in the world, and it is. You know how I know America is the greatest country in the world? Because the richest people in China want to buy all the real estate. Because they want their kids to go to our universities. Because when is the last time you heard of a boatload of American refugees going to another country? This is still the greatest nation in the world. But we've got some real challenges. And one of the challenges is that if we keep doing what we are doing right now, We will not be as great as we can be, and we will not be as great as we once were. We are headed in the wrong direction. We are headed in the wrong direction at home, with economic policies that are outdated and are holding us back. And we are headed in the wrong direction around the world, where a strong America has never been more needed. But in fact, you cannot name me a part of the world where America is safer or stronger than it was before Barack Obama became president. So we are headed in the wrong direction. And we will continue to head in the wrong direction if the next 4 years are anything like the last 8. Which is why this election is so important. One of the things I started saying over and over again is this election is not just a choice between Republicans and Democrats. Unlike other elections, this is not just a choice between different names on a ballot. This election truly is a generational choice. And by that I mean the time has come for this generation of Americans to choose what kind of country we want America to be in the 21st century. And before us, there is only 2 choices. We can either be greater than we have ever been, or we will be the first Americans to leave our children worse off than ourselves. Our children will either be the freest and the most prosperous Americans ever, or they will be the first Americans to inherit from their parents a diminished nation. The road we are on right now is a road that will lead to decline. Why? Because we have too many people in politics that are completely out of touch or out of date. I do not believe that there has ever been a time in the lifetime of anyone in this hall tonight where our government has been more out of touch with what's happening in your life than it is today. And I would argue and as a Republican, I wish I could tell you it's all because of the Democrats. It is mostly because of the Democrats. But Republicans share part of the blame. For too long, we have sent people to Washington, and nothing happened. And the frustration is real. I ran for the Senate in 2009, and because of incredible odds, the entire establishment of the Republican Party was against me. Literally, everybody in the Senate leadership supported my opponent, who was the sitting governor of Florida running for the Senate. I was losing by 40 or 50 points. I didn't know how I was going to raise the money, and the only people that thought I could win all happened to live in my home. And 4 of them were under the age of 10. But I ran because I believed this country was headed in the wrong direction. And that if we stayed headed in the wrong direction, it would rob us of everything that made us special and unique. And so we were elected in 2010. We had a majority in the House and a growing number in the Senate. And nothing happened. And then in 2014, the American people sent a majority to the U.S. Senate of Republicans, and still not enough has happened. You look at the national debt, they say there's no bipartisanship in Washington. That isn't true. This debt that we have in Washington is a bipartisan debt. Now, we've never seen it grow as fast as we have over the last 4 years, or the last 6 years under Barack Obama, under the last 7 years under this president. But both parties have contributed to these issues. What we need today are leaders that understand the world in which we live in now, in the 21st century. We also need leaders with a sense of urgency about the issues that we face. We still have time to get these things right, but we do not have forever. And that is why I approach this election with a great sense of urgency. That is why I ignored some of the same people who came to me this time, who came to me 5 years ago and said, you need to wait your turn. You need to wait in line. I didn't know there was a line to run for president. and I don't know what we're waiting for. Because what is at stake is our very identity as a nation and as a people. For over 2 centuries, America has been exceptional. And by exceptional, that means we are the exception to the rule. You know what the rule is in human history? Here's the rule. Almost everyone that has ever lived in a country that said to them, you can only be whatever your parents were. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter how long you're willing to work and persevere. It doesn't matter. You can only be whatever your family did before you. Now, for someone like me, born and raised my entire life in this great nation, it's hard to imagine what that would feel like. But I want you to imagine for a moment living in a country that said to you, you can only be whatever your parents were before you. If your parents were rich or famous, that was good news. But if they were anyone else, you were trapped. Well, my friends, that's been the human condition for all of history. That is the way most people that have ever lived, the vast majority of people that have ever lived, that is how they had to live. What we have here is so different. It began at our founding. The only nation founded on the idea that our rights don't come from government, they come from our Creator. They come from God. I believe that every single person has rights given to them by their Creator, chiefly the right to life, to liberty, and to pursue happiness. And that the reason why we have a government is not to decide our rights or to grant them, but to protect them. And from that flowed our republic. It's one of the reasons we get to choose our leaders. But from that also flowed the free enterprise system. There is no economic model in human history like the free enterprise system. You know why? Because it's the only economic model in human history where you can make poor people richer without having to make rich people poor. It's the only economic model in the history of the world where you can be better off without having to make someone else worse off. And the result is truly a miracle. Look what this nation has achieved over 2 centuries. And most startling of all, what this nation has been able to do in which each generation was able to leave the next better off. Now we must decide if we are willing to do what it takes to remain that kind of country. And you know what's standing in the way? Our own policies, primarily from Washington. It begins with economic policies that are completely outdated. This economy is so different from the one I grew up in. And it isn't just different, it's changing faster than ever. You want proof? Well, it took the telephone 75 years for it to reach 100 million users. It took Candy Crush 1 year to reach 100 million users. So the world is changing, and it's changing faster than ever. But our policies and too many of our leaders are relics of the past. We have a retirement system designed in the 30s. We have a higher education system designed in the 50s. We have anti-poverty programs that don't cure poverty, they trap people in poverty, designed in the 60s. We have energy policies from the 70s, we have tax policies from the 80s. Outdated policies that are holding us back. The second thing is we have policies that don't allow us to compete globally. We live in a globally competitive economy, which means our competition is not some other state or some other city. It is countries halfway around the world that are competing with us for the best jobs, the best ideas, the best talent. And we are losing some of those competitions because of our own policies. And you know what the answer is to these problems? The answer is not to change our principles. As Republicans, the answer is not to become more like the Democratic Party. We already have a Democratic Party. We don't need 2 Democratic parties. The answer is to apply our principles that still work. Limited government and free enterprise still work. They work better today than they have ever worked. We have to apply those principles to the challenges of the 21st century. We need a tax code that allows us to globally compete again. That's not what we have right now. If I asked you to define a tax code that encourages companies not to grow and leave America, you would give me the American Federal Tax Code. And that's why we're for tax reform. We have regulations that are destroying small business. It's one of the reasons why, for the first time in 35 years, we have more businesses dying than starting. That's why I proposed a regulatory budget that would lower and then cap how much regulations can cost our economy. And it would say to these agencies, if you want to write a new regulation, you're going to have to get rid of an old one that costs just as much. So they can't keep growing these bureaucracies that are really bad for small business. The big business, they can hire the fanciest lawyers, the best lobbyists in Washington. But a small business can't. And so they get stuck and they get trapped. And in fact, big business often uses regulations to keep out an innovative competitor. This is also why we need to balance our budgets and bring the debt under control. We have a $19 trillion debt. We owe close to $100 trillion of unfunded future liabilities. And we're not doing anything about it. It is not a question of if we're going to have a debt crisis. It is only a question of when. And no one can tell you when it's going to happen. But we won't make it another 10 years without addressing this issue. And that's why we need to deal with the causes of that debt. The causes of that debt are not defense spending. The causes of that debt are not foreign aid, less than 1% of our budget. The causes of our long-term debt are the way important programs are structured for future generations. Now, I come from Florida. You may not know this. This is not widely known. But there are a lot of people in Florida on Medicare and Social Security. One of them happens to be my mother. She's 85 years old. I am against anything, any changes that are bad for my mother. And here's the good news. We don't have to change anything for her. We don't have to change anything for the people that are retired now or the people that are about to retire. But here's the truth, and our next president better be someone that's willing to say the truth about this. There is no way that Medicare and Social Security looks the same for me as it did for my parents. There's no way. It either won't exist or we reform it. And what do I mean by reform? Instead of retiring at 67, I may have to retire at 68. I will still be among the young senators. Don't worry, I won't be in the Senate. I'm not even running for re-election. I may be commissioner of the SEC. Or the NFL. Whatever. If I've been financially successful, my Social Security benefits may not grow as fast as they did for my parents, or as fast as they grow for someone who made less money. My Medicare benefits could very well be the option of taking that money and using it to buy a private plan that I like better. If we do these things, we can save these programs. We don't have to change anything for people that are about to retire or already retired, and we can help bring our debt under control. The other thing we have to do to be globally competitive, we have to fully utilize our energy resources. God has blessed America with oil, with natural gas, with coal, with the ability to do nuclear energy. Now, I'm fine. Let's lead the world in wind. Let's lead the world in solar. Let's lead the world in biofuels. Let's lead the world in energy efficiency. But it would be reckless and irresponsible not to fully utilize the oil and the natural gas that our nation has been blessed with. Natural gas, we have an abundant supply. You know how we found that abundant supply? Not because of the government, but because of the American innovator. The American innovator figured out not just how to drill down, but how to drill sideways. And suddenly, we've gotten access to an abundant supply of natural gas. Let me tell you what happens when we fully utilize it. The utility rates in America become cheaper than the rest of the world. You know what that means for manufacturing? That means the cost of manufacturing in America when it comes to energy will be substantially less than our competitors. And what that will mean is a manufacturing renaissance. We can be an economy that makes things again. And one more thing we have. One more thing we have to do if we want to be globally competitive. We must repeal and replace Obamacare. We're all talking about fighting against Obamacare. I congratulate them. It's important to fight against it. But I'm the only one running for president that's actually been able to score victories against Obamacare. Let me tell you why. I don't know if you know this, but do you know that in Obamacare there is a bailout fund? A bailout fund funded by you, the American taxpayer. And what it says is, if you're an insurance company and you participate in the Obamacare exchange and you lose money, the American taxpayer will bail you out for your losses. So last year, I was able to get that strike in the budget debate. I was able to get that straight. We took away that bill. And so this year, the insurance companies came for their money. Hey, we lost money on Obamacare. Give us the bailout money. And guess what? $2.5 billion of your tax dollar weren't there waiting for them. So now these insurance companies. are saying, well, you know what? One of them is the largest health insurance company in America, has stopped marketing their Obamacare plan. You know what that means? That means they don't want people to know they sell it because they're hoping people don't buy it because they lose money on it. They're even threatening to pull out of the whole thing. The good news is we saved you $2.5 billion last year that didn't go to fund a bailout of private insurance companies who decided to participate in Obamacare. The bad news is we have to do it again this year. And over the next 3 or 4 weeks, we will decide in Congress whether or not to fund it. And I hope you join us to ensure that once again, we do not fund the Obamacare bailout. There will also be an effort this month to repeal Obamacare through reconciliation, which is a fancy term for a process they used to pass it in the first place. We will pass it out of the House, we will pass it out of the Senate, I believe, and then this president will veto it. But in January of 2017, if God willing I am the President of the United States, I will ask Congress to pass it, and I will sign it immediately, and we will repeal Obamacare. You know what we'll replace it with? The American Free Enterprise System. We will put you in charge of your health care money. Whether it's a refundable tax credit or the money your employer gives you that you don't pay taxes on, and you will be able to use it to buy any insurance you want, of the kind you want, from any company in this country that will sell you a plan, even if they're in another state. And if we can do tax reform and regulatory reform and help balance our budgets and fully utilize our energy resources and repeal and replace Obamacare, let me tell you what's going to happen. The American private sector, made up of the best and most productive workers on the planet, and the most innovative people in the world, the American private sector is not just going to create millions of new jobs. The American private sector is going to create millions of jobs that pay more than the jobs that are being created now. Millions of 21st century jobs. And it reminds us that government doesn't create these jobs. And the next time a politician tells you how many millions of jobs they created when they were governor, or they were senator, or they were mayor, be very concerned. Because if they're telling the truth, that means they grew the government by 1 million jobs. The jobs we need are created by the private sector. And we are going to put in place policies that make America the single best place in the world for the private sector to create those jobs. Those new jobs are going to require more skills than jobs have ever required. Which is why the second thing we have to do is modernize higher education. For starters, we have to change what it means. You know what higher education has meant for too long? It's only meant one thing: 4 years of college. There's nothing wrong with that. But we started telling young people in this country about 25 years ago, trade school are for the kids that aren't smart enough to go to college. That's a lie. Trade school are for people that want to make $50,000 a year at 18 and 19 years of age. And electricians, and machinists, and welders, and pipe fitters, and airplane mechanics, and car technicians, and people that work in the paint and body shop. We need to train more people to do that. Yeah. Those are good jobs. Those jobs pay more than some of these college jobs do. A lot of them. Why do we stop training people to do it? And when I'm president, I will talk about this all the time. I will celebrate and lift up these jobs and hopefully convince millions of young Americans that this is the right way forward for them. That these are not less than the other jobs. These jobs are the backbone of our economy, the backbone of our communities, and the backbone of our future. And we're going to open up the Pell Grant. Today, the Pell Grant is a financial aid program that you can only use after you graduate high school. You can use it to go to trade school, but after you graduate high school. We will open it up for high school students, which means that you're 16, 17 years of age, you will be able to go to high school in the morning and then use your Pell Grant to go to trade school in the afternoon. And when you graduate from high school, you're not just going to get a high school diploma. You're going to get an industry certification and you're going to be ready to work. You're going to still have to wear your traditional schools. Otherwise, how can we have college football? But these schools need more competition. You realize there's only one way to get a degree these days? You got to go to an accredited school, sit in their classroom for 4 years, and they give you a degree. That's the only way. We need an alternative to that. You know why we need an alternative? Because there are millions of Americans that can't afford that and don't have the time for that. They're a single mother working as a receptionist making $10 an hour. Or a single mother working as a home health aide making $9 an hour. They can't go back to school. You know why? Because they have to work full time and they have kids to raise. They don't have time to sit in a classroom for 6 hours a day for 4 years. But what if we started giving people credit for what they've already learned? For military experience. If you served in the military, if you served a tour duty in the Middle East, you're telling me that's not worth at least 4 credit hours in Middle Eastern affairs? Credit for work experience, for life experience, for military experience, for self-directed learning, which is what you learn on your own, online, through great courses, some of which are free. Whatever they're missing, allow them to learn that from a variety of different sources. And suddenly you have opened up higher education for millions of people who they can't afford it and are locked out. And as far as traditional four-year schools, they're still going to be there. But this student loan problem is out of control. Out of control. I myself owed over $100 in student loans, which I was able to pay off only because I wrote a book called American Son. It's now available on paperback. If I hadn't written that book and gotten fortunate and blessed with the opportunity, I don't know when I would have paid that loan. There are hundreds of thousands of young Americans stuck with thousands of dollars in student loans that they borrowed for a degree that didn't lead to job. We've got to deal with this issue. It begins by creating more competition so that tuition is under control. It continues by creating alternatives like the student investment plan, especially useful for graduate students. You can go to a private investment group and have them pay your tuition in exchange for you paying them back a percentage of your income. It's better than a loan because it doesn't go on your credit report and all the risk is on them. But we also need to provide students more information. When I'm president, before a student takes out a student loan, they will be told how much people make when they graduate from their school with a degree that they're seeking. So they can decide whether it's worth borrowing thousands of dollars to major in whatever it is they've chosen. So they can make an informed and intelligent decision about the right major and about how much money to pay for it. And my point to you in these two things is, if we can create an economy that is globally competitive, and we can make it faster, easier, and cheaper for people to acquire the skills they need, there's no economy in the world that will be able to compete with us. We won't just have an economic recovery, we will have an economic renaissance, unlike anything we have ever seen in history. That's why I'm so passionate about this. That's why I have such a sense of urgency about this. That's why I ignore the voices in the Republican establishment that have said to me, it's not your turn to run. Because we can't wait any longer. These opportunities are there for us, but we have to go out and get them. It won't happen on its own. And it won't happen unless we do one more thing. It's the most important thing the federal government does. And that's keep us safe. It's the reason why we have a federal government. We don't have a federal government to run kids control education. We don't need Common Core. We don't need that. Ours is supposed to be a limited federal government. The founders would not recognize this government. They wouldn't recognize the bureaucracy. They wouldn't recognize what's happened in the court system. They wouldn't recognize the habitual violations of the Constitution and the divisions and separation of power by this president. And they wouldn't understand how large and unmanageable the federal government has become. That's why we need to bring it to its proper size. But the one thing the federal government has to do is keep us safe. And it is failing. I was recently, about maybe an hour ago, by a radio host asked, if you were to be able to ask Hillary Clinton one question, what would it be? And I would say this: name me one part of the world where we are safer today than we were before Barack Obama took over as president. North Korea is governed by a lunatic who possesses dozens of nuclear warheads. China is undergoing the most rapid military expansion in the history of the world. And they're using it to take over the most important shipping lane in the world, the South China Sea. The Russians are newly aggressive, sowing instability in the Middle East, sowing instability in Europe as they're governed by a gangster. Iran is governed by a radical Shia player with an apocalyptic vision of the future. And we're about to give them $150 billion of sanctions relief thanks to Barack Obama, which they are going to use to sponsor terrorism. They're going to use to build a long-range missile that can reach America, and eventually they're going to use to buy or build a nuclear warhead of their own. And last but not least, radical Islamic jihadists are spreading their reach and their abilities throughout this planet. The latest group that we know about, Al-Qaeda is not out of business. They're still there. There are other groups that are still there. But the one we hear a lot about these days is ISIS. And we have not spent enough time educating the American people about who ISIS is. Let me tell you who ISIS is. ISIS is a radical Sunni Islamic group motivated by an apocalyptic vision of the future. They have a magazine. The name of that magazine is called Dabiq, D-A-B-I-Q. It's an online magazine. Do you know why it's named Dabiq? Dabiq is the name of a city. It's a city in Syria. And it's a city in Syria where, according to their interpretation of their prophecies, this is the city where Islamic forces led by them are going to confront and defeat what they call the armies of Rome, basically means the West. So when they're out there recruiting fighters, what they're basically telling them is join ISIS, because we were going to be part of that apocalyptic big army that's going to usher in the final defeat of the West and the beginning of the apocalypse and the new global caliphate. Now, I know this sounds weird. It sounds like science fiction. It sounds like something from a novel. It sounds like something from a movie. My friends, it is not a novel. It is not fiction. This is exactly who they are. And why is it important that we know this? Because you understand the nature of the threat. These people are motivated by their perverse interpretation of their Sunni faith. They consider anyone who doesn't agree with them to be a heretic. That includes other Muslims. If you're a Sunni that does not agree with them, you are a heretic worthy of death. If you are a Shia, you are a heretic worthy of death. If you are a Buddhist, you are a heretic worthy of death. If you are a Christian or a Jew, you are a heretic worthy of death. We have to understand who they are and understand how to deal with them. They cannot be contained. They will not be contained. They must be defeated. Either they win or we win. There is no other option. How can they defeat it? It begins by acknowledging exactly who they are. They are radical Islamic terrorists. That is who they are. Motivated by the perverse interpretation of their faith. Second, we have to have the ability to know more about them than they ever know about us. And that's why we have to have strong intelligence programs. It is unacceptable that today, because of disclosures and because of changes to the law, supported sometimes by Republicans themselves, we have lost the ability to find these people before they find us. But they also must be defeated by having the strength necessary to defeat them. And in the face of all these challenges that I just outlined to you, North Korea, China, Russia, Iran, radical jihadists, do you know what this president is doing? He is eviscerating our military. Eviscerating. I'm not telling you there isn't waste in the Pentagon budget. There is. And we should get rid of that waste. Because every dollar that's being wasted is a dollar that isn't being spent defending you. But I am telling you there isn't $1 trillion of waste. And that is how much is going to be cut out of our defense budgets over the next 10 years. And you know what that leads to? Let me tell you what that $1 trillion cut leads to. It leads to the smallest and the oldest Air Force we have ever had. It leads to the smallest and oldest Navy we have had since 1914. It leads to an Army that's already too small, being reduced by another 40,000 positions over the next 2 years. The world is growing more dangerous and we are growing weaker. This cannot be the direction we continue to head. And that's why, if God willing, I am President of the United States, one of the first things I will do is I will rebuild the American military. So that we will have a military that never puts our men and women in a fair fight. You know what that means? That means we're going to give them an unfair advantage over anyone they ever fight. They will have better training, they will have better intelligence, and they will have better weapons. And then when they come home, after they've taken care of us, when I'm president, we are going to take care of them. This is not a talking point for me. First, it's personal. My brother's a veteran, served in the Green Berets from 1968 to 1971. He's 20 members older than the same parents. My parents are very optimistic about the future. Second, as a senator from 4, we get so many calls in office that we break your heart. The soldier wounded in combat, missing both limbs, who has to convince someone that they were permanently disabled because of war injuries. And that's why I've taken action on these issues. A year ago, despite the fact that the Democrats still control Congress, I was able to pass a law that gave the VA secretary the power to fire anyone, any senior executive that wasn't doing a good job. Now, unfortunately, they only fire one person. And I'm not telling you everybody at the VA is bad. There are really good people that work at the VA. There are really good people that care about our veterans that work at the VA. There are VA systems in America that are working well, and then there are those that are not. And there is not enough accountability. So this year we're pushing for a new law that says now you can fire anyone who is not doing a good job at the VA. And Barack Obama's law. When I'm president, if you work at the VA or any agency of government for that matter, and you are not doing a good job, you will be fired and you will be replaced by someone who will do a good job. you're a veteran, we thank you for your service. You have the GI Bill. You can take the GI Bill to any university, any college, any trade school you want. Why can't you take your VA benefits to any hospital, any doctor, or any clinic?
Right.
And I'm president, the VA benefits will follow the veteran, not the veteran have to follow the benefits. So these are our challenges, and these are also our opportunities. To put in place policies that allow our private sector to succeed. To put in place policies that make it faster, easier, and cheaper for all Americans to acquire the 21st century skills they need to succeed. And to rebuild our military and honor our veterans so that we remain the strongest and most powerful military nation on earth. And if we do these things, the greatest era of American history is before us. We have to do it. And we're running out of time. We still have time, but we are running out of time. And that's why this election is so important. That's why this election is so critical. And that's why this election is a generational choice. Now this is a choice we've always had to make. Just any cursory examination of our history would show you that America has always faced great challenges. Ours is not the story of a nation that had it easy. This nation was founded by declaring independence of the most powerful empire on the planet. Then this nation was embroiled in a bitter civil war that almost ended the young country. Not long after that, this nation found itself embroiled in a bloody world war. The world had never seen such carnage. Almost as soon as the First World War ended, America was embroiled in a Great Depression, a traumatic economic experience. As soon as that ended, we were sucked into a second World War, even worse than the First World War. As soon as that ended, we found ourselves in a decades-long Cold War. A Cold War that threatened the very existence of life on this planet. The 1960s were not an easy time for America. The Civil Rights Movement divided us geographically. All sorts of challenges that we faced as a nation. These were real challenges that our people faced. And yet in each generation, Americans did what they had to do. They confronted their challenges and they embraced their opportunities. And because they did, for over 2 centuries now, each generation has left the next better off for themselves. Now the time has come for us to do our part. The moment has arrived for us to do what we need to do to ensure that the next generation enjoys a better life and a better country. And we are all called to this task. But I want to share with you why I am so personally motivated by it. You see, America owes me nothing. America doesn't owe me a thing. But I have a debt to America I will never fully repay. America is not just the country I was born in. America is the country that literally changed the history of my family. Both of my parents were born on the island of Cuba. They were born into poor families with no connections, no money, no access to power. They were stuck. My father had particularly difficult. When he was 4 days shy of his 9th birthday, my father's mother died. 4 days shy of his 9th birthday. And so in order to help provide for himself and the family, my father had to stop going to school and start working. He never went back to school. And he would work for the next 70 years of his life. Now, when my father was a young boy and later a young man, he had big dreams because young people have big dreams. But the dreams he had for himself became impossible. And so when they came to America, my parents found a new dream. And the new dream my parents found was they wanted to make sure that what happened to them never happened to us. They wanted to make sure that all the hopes, all the dreams they once had for themselves would be possible for us. That no dream would be too big, that no door would be closed. That became the very purpose of their lives. And that's why they worked so hard for so long. My mother built aluminum chairs at a factory. She was a cashier at a hotel in Miami Beach. She was a maid at a hotel in Las Vegas, a stockbroker king. My father worked primarily as a banquet bartender, which means he worked on nights and on weekends and on holidays for decades. For decades, he stood behind a small portable bar in the back of a banquet hall. So one day I would have the chance to be anything I wanted. For me, the journey from behind that bar where he stood to this stage I stand on here this afternoon, to the life I have today, for me, that journey is the essence of the American dream. It's what makes us special. is your basis different? And it's not just my story. That story is our story. For who among us is not but a generation or two removed from someone who did that for us? Maybe it was your grandparents who undertook extraordinary sacrifices so your parents would have the chance to do all the things they never could. Maybe it was your parents. Maybe your father was the one that worked those 2 jobs. Your mother was the one that sacrificed so you could have all the things he or she never could. Or maybe that's you doing it for your children now. And so in the end, when we ask ourselves, do we want to remain a special country? The answer to that question will be determined by whether stories like that are still possible. Can the people who are trying to do that now still do it? Are we still a country? Will we still be a country where through hard work and perseverance, not only can you achieve a better life, but you can leave your children better off than yourself? You see, what makes America special is not that we have rich people. We're proud of the fact that we have financial success. We celebrate it. We hold it up. But every country has rich people. Even the poorest country in the world has rich people. What makes America so special is the millions upon millions of people who will never be rich and will never be famous. But because they work hard and they persevere, are able to achieve happiness and leave their children better off than themselves. And what is at stake now in this election is whether we're still going to be that kind of country, or whether we become like the other countries, where whatever you were doing when you were born, that's what you're stuck in for the rest of your life. And I'm here to tell you that if we do what needs to be done in this election, that American dream won't just survive. That American dream will reach more people and change more lives than ever before. If we do what needs to be done, not only will the 21st century be as good as the 20th century, it will be a new American century. And you and I, and this generation, will be the authors of the greatest chapter in the amazing story of America. That is what we must do in this election. That is why I hope I can earn your support, because together we can usher in the greatest era in this great nation's history. So thank you for having me. God bless.
I'm taking them. Yeah, this goes by anyway. Here you go. Come on.